In today's video, we're going to be diving into the upcoming pattern, taking a look at an overall warmer period of time over the next 2 to 3 weeks. And I know I've been saying that for days and days and days now, but within there, especially right around the 23rd, 24th onward towards the end of March, there is a signaling from the models that that could be a little bit of a colder time within an overall warmer long-term period. And this will open up the opportunity for a few interesting things. First off, in the Northeast, in the Ohio Valley, and parts of the Mid-Atlantic, this could spell some snowfall. What I'm seeing on the models is that this potential snowfall wouldn't be all snow events. It wouldn't be anything too major, but it might bring about some opportunities for snowfall. So we're going to take a little bit of a look at that on the models today. More severe weather outbreaks are possible, as there's going to be a few major lows moving across the nation, such as our last two did, basically moving past the Rockies into the plains, Midwest, and then eventually moving eastward. So this will present itself as some risks for severe weather. We're going to be diving into all of these things. So let's first off take a look at the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook here from the Climate Prediction Center, as we always do. And this is only something I've been doing for maybe 4 months now. And I really like starting out with this because it gives us an idea of like a big picture, and then we're able to just break it down further later on. Let me know what you think in the comments, but this is for the 22nd through the 26th. This is as of today. So we do see some warmer temperatures along this western area. We see this does extend up into some of Alaska as well. So this is a predominantly positive PNA look, and right around this time frame is when we expect this purely warm pattern in the east to become a little bit shaken up. We see some above normal temperatures expected in the north central, some for the northeast and mid-Atlantic, but there's this glaring large area across the east where we have these near normal conditions expected. And I really feel like starting right around this time frame is when we're going to be watching for the potential for colder air to move in. Again, it's potential at this point because we're still a good week away from most of this, if not about 10 days. So there is a lot that can change, and this has just kind of suddenly popped up on the models. So we could see these things either look a little bit more marginal or even more intense. It could really swing either way. So we'll be watching it closely. The precipitation really doesn't miss a beat, though. We see a similar outlook to what we've been kind of experiencing and expecting. Below normal precipitation in the southwest, above normal in the northwest there, and then along pretty much all of the east, for the most part, east of the Mississippi River. We are expecting above normal precipitation for the 22nd through 26th. The 8 to 14 day temperature pattern tells a lot more of the story that I've been discussing early on in this video within the last minute or two. And we see a full-blown positive PNA pattern really take over, with just tons of warmth for overall the entire western half of the nation. And this leads to a little bit more colder air becoming possible. We don't see any dark blues. It's nothing crazy. The models are indicating some pretty well below normal temperatures could be experienced on specific dates, but I don't see well below normal temperatures prevailing for more than a few days at a time. I think we're going to be going back and forth for the most part, a little bit between slightly below normal temperatures to even near normal temperatures, swinging all the way back to well below normal temperatures for that final, let's call it, week of March. And we can see that the Northeast, especially New England, kind of holds on to some of that warmth as well. This area in particular tends to just be a little bit different than the rest of the East sometimes. What I like to attribute it to is really the fact that New England kind of sticks out further eastward than the rest of the East Coast. If we were to draw a straight line, down the East Coast, we can see that New England sticks out the furthest, obviously. And yeah, I think that just west to east difference is why we see such a different pattern oftentimes up there. Either way, let's take a look at the precipitation, and it doesn't really change too much from the 6 to 10 day outlook to the 8 to 14 day outlook, which, by the way, I forget if I mentioned this, is for the 24th through 30th. We do see below normal precipitation for the southwest, above normal in the northwest, and then still it's a little bit more exclusive to the more immediate eastern areas, but there is still this pretty large area of above normal precipitation expected here in the eastern areas of the United States here. Now, as we take a look at the last 15 days, which will be the 2nd through 16th of March, I can't believe we're already halfway through with March. It's just unbelievable how quick it's going by. Now we see below normal temperatures have prevailed exactly as we expected, kind of. We see warmer temperatures for the central and now basically the entire eastern states as well. So this is exactly what we've been preaching for weeks and weeks now about the overall look for March. Now, will this colder pattern be a little bit more of an overperformer, and will it kind of shake this look up? Or will this basically be the final look? And that's the question mark as we're moving into the second half of March. We'll track it together and I'll update you guys daily on that. Let's take a look at the European model. We still do have some severe weather ongoing. I'm making this video a little bit late. It's 7:59 right now when I'm recording this, so a little bit of a later video today. There is still tornado warnings across North Carolina, some severe weather warnings as well. Interestingly, today as well, Pennsylvania, upstate New York overperformed, I would say. I mean, earlier today, I saw a line of severe thunderstorm warnings with that and very, very high DBZ on the radar. You know, you saw your pinks and purples showing up. So let me know if you guys are up there in Pennsylvania or New York and what those storms were like, because they looked pretty intense on radar and I saw a lot of damaging wind reports come in. So update us on that, guys, in the comment if you do live up there. We do see some snowfall for Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, Canada that was happening a little bit earlier today. I want to move this towards this evening, actually. So let's take a look at, this is 2 a.m. And what we basically see when we look at this is that these thunderstorms are still going to be ongoing throughout portions of maybe even southern New England, parts of the mid-Atlantic, and down into some of the southern New England or northern southeast areas like Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina here. These thunderstorms are going to be a through the evening overnight threat. And really, from what I've been seeing, rainfall might persist into the morning, like 8, 9, 10 a.m. for some of these areas. So expect a lot of rain potentially. Now, our first little glimmer of cold air comes for the high temperatures tomorrow, actually 5 p.m. Monday on the 17th. Tomorrow, what we see is because this cold front moves through, we see this little bit of cold air that moves in, and it's nothing crazy. I don't want to push this as like an Arctic blast or anything. This is really just a nice little cool down. I wouldn't even call it nice because I'm hoping for the warmer temperatures at this point, but we're moving right back down into like average to slightly below average temperatures here. So think, 40s, 50s as highs is generally what we're going to be dealing with the most here for Monday on the 17th. And as we just move a little bit further, I want to take us straight towards Tuesday. We see that our next storm in the plains is already starting out Tuesday the 18th here. 988 there across areas of eastern Colorado into Kansas, Nebraska. We are seeing snowfall throughout the Rockies here, throughout some of the plains. This is ranging from light, moderate, heavy snowfall, so a big-time Rocky Mountain snow event out there for Tuesday, and that did start on Monday as well. We see that by Wednesday afternoon, this low is still in the 980s. It's actually exactly 988 still over southeastern Iowa. Snowfall is around for a lot of the plains into the upper Midwest, and that's really the kind of colder quadrant of the storm. We do see this cold front underneath, and there is some isolated and scattered thunderstorms popping up for Illinois, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi. The severe weather threat with this one, although it's 4 days away, is still relatively unknown. I would say that we're likely looking at some general thunderstorms, upwards of maybe a marginal risk or slight risk at this point. Is kind of what this is looking like, especially for Wednesday here. We'll have to see what the Storm Prediction Center comes out with. Obviously, we didn't have any extended day outlooks for this one, so it's not something that they've been looking at for a long time as a major severe weather threat, but we'll have to wait and see what this looks like. Come tomorrow on the Storm Prediction Center outlooks, we will be able to see that, so exciting stuff. Tune in with us tomorrow for that. Thursday, maybe looking a little bit more intense here. Thursday the 20th, we see this low is over eastern Canada. We have this dragging cold front once again. So we end up with another round of thunderstorms, maybe very similarly, all the way from Florida through the southeast into the mid-Atlantic. And look at this. We get this heavy pocket for areas of New York, Pennsylvania, maybe even in northern Virginia. Maybe we end up, at least in these parts of the nation, with a very similar, like, overperforming thunderstorm event there Thursday the 20th. Time will tell, but it does look kind of similar. We'll have to wait and see with that. By Friday, that one moves out, and look at that. We get snowfall across some of the Appalachian Mountain Range, and that does extend into upstate New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and then eventually into Maine. Obviously, we start out as rainfall for these areas, so what we see is for the day, on Thursday, the 20th, we get these saturating rainfall events, even thunderstorms in some of these areas. and then you're getting snow to follow up. And the rain lasts a lot longer than the snow does in those areas. So you can imagine that the accumulation is going to be a very challenging thing to happen. And if there is any, you're looking mostly at like slushy types of snowfall and a pretty small amount of it at that. So that's kind of how I see a lot of these potential snowfall events. But when we're talking mid to late March, I mean, that is kind of notable, I would say, at least. As we move towards Saturday here on the 22nd, we do get a weaker low across the Ohio Valley and Midwest. This is a little bit unsimilar to our previous storms. A lot of ours have kind of went way up to the north. This one is much further south. So we get this low here, probably bringing with it some thunderstorm chances as we're just moving later and later into the spring. But again, I don't see major severe weather outbreak written on that one at all. We do see another kind of just burst of storms start up for the deeper south here. We get this nice little jet diving southward and it's inverting northward there. This could be something to watch, you know, around that kind of 23rd, 24th, 25th time frame. We don't have a strong low associated with it, but with that jet to the north, this is a little bit of a classic look, potentially for some severe weather down there, especially we have the storms flaring up. That does move into the southeast. We're probably like we saw in the deep south, there would probably be a present thunderstorm to maybe even some severe weather risk in here that needs to be watched for. We can see that this one is pulling in the cold air, and we have a full-blown positive PNA by the 25th here, just like the Climate Prediction Center was showing, and this just forces that cold air in behind that low. So we see lots of cold air, and we're probably going to see some people switch over to snowfall here. Yeah, so by the time we're reaching Tuesday morning, 8 a.m., we're seeing New York, New England switching over to snowfall here. This one's the opposite of the previous one, though. We see actually it starts out as snowfall, pretty heavy snowfall in spots, and then we're switching back over to rainfall for most areas after that's said and done. So that has kind of the same problems. You know, the snow could accumulate, but the rain comes through. Is there even snow left after the rain comes through? And that's something that we obviously have a lot of time to figure out. This is an interesting frame by the morning of Thursday, the 27th. I mean, this is a classic positive PNA look right here. This is really, really stretching far north into Alberta there. And as a result, we really see this cold air dive far to the south. So it's not brutal. It's not like January cold here, but for March, this is rather cold. And even in January and February, this would probably be slightly below normal temperatures. So it is a pretty impressive frame here. Keep in mind, this is beyond 10 days out. So again, this does have time to change, like I mentioned earlier. But still, we're getting some impressive outputting here from these models, and even this frame here by the high temperatures of Thursday. Some snow showers nearby the Great Lakes, cold reaching as far south as the Carolinas and Georgia and Alabama there, and then this warmth is well up into Canada and the West. So huge shakeup in the pattern. But both of these models that we're going to look at today get us to something like this before the end of March, where we end up back in this trough in the West, aka negative PNA look. And we get the opposite. We get this warmth surging back into the east for the very end of March. So we'll have to see if this continues to be the look where we're warm. We cool down around that, again, 22nd through 24th time frame. And then we're warming back up before the very end is the look here. We do get a strong low right at the end of the model run, so take it with a grain of salt. But we do get snowfall very close to that Canadian border, and this does look intense. But there's just so much time for this to change, so I'm pretty uncertain about that. GFS model, when we look at it, we see our system passes through, just like the other one. And we do get this second system here. It's a little stronger, 984, and similarly, we have some plains and Midwest snowfall in there. And there is some thunderstorm look to it here for parts of the Midwest. And then down there for the deeper south, there's a little bit of a hole in between, so we'll have to see how much potential this really has for thunderstorms. And by the time we're reaching the night of Wednesday into Thursday, it does become a bit more organized. And for the east, we actually do end up with a pretty decent line here of what looks to be at least showers, if not thunderstorms, especially the further south you go. We do follow this up, just like the European model, with some snowfall there for New England. But again, we start as rain, so how much will that even stick around? No pun intended. We do end up with this little surge of storms in the deep south, the same exact way. The jet stream looks a little bit different. We get this same kind of dip and then kind of like northern turn there at a certain point, but it is further east based. I still think that this would present an interesting situation for the deep south, again, around that 23rd, 24th, 25th time frame. And it does move up into the east the same exact way for that later in March pattern. we end up with this purely positive PNA, very cold pattern in the east, right around that 25th, 26th, 27th time frame. But just like the European model, we actually do end up with a warming trend as we move towards April 1st here, where everything's kind of just lifting off. And like I said, New England tends to be the opposite. We see cooler temperatures there, but the rest of the east looks quite a bit warmer. And we're seeing this cooling trend out west as well, which is indicative of a negative PNA. So yeah, both models kind of end us off at the same point there, which is good for agreement. I mean, you like to see that. Total precipitation still very similar to what we've been looking at for weeks now, above average in the northwest, above average for parts of the east here, but there is a dry pocket in here that we're going to need to look at, especially in these parts where we're well below normal. Let's take a look at it. We see this above normal conditions kind of for the mid-Atlantic up through the northeast and then for a lot of the northwest, but we are very dry throughout the center of the nation, and that does extend into kind of like the more Midwest areas and deep south, and this is really dry in there. The total snowfall in the European model, again, this is not what accumulates, this is just the total amount of snowfall, so this doesn't take into account like the rain hitting after or before it, or the ground being wet, or the ground being too warm. So definitely take it with a grain of salt. These numbers are probably inflated for the areas in the Northeast dealing with those complications. And for that reason, I mean, we'll look at the West real quick, and we're seeing feet of snowfall. Even the kind of plains and Midwest, we're getting plowable snowfall for some of those areas. But for the Northeast, what I'd like to do is switch over to the positive snow depth change. And we see that that changes the snowfall quite a bit. So this is what the model is predicting to accumulate. So we do see for some of these Appalachian mountains, we do get a dusting up to a few inches. And for most of New England, that's the case as well. You're looking at maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 inches of snowfall for most of those areas outside of the mountains. And keep in mind that this still isn't accounting for rain that hits after the snow. This is just what ends up accumulating, even if it melts an hour later. And this is not just for one event. This is for 2 to 3 minor snow events over the next 2 weeks. So this is not what you're going to see total on the ground at any point, but this is what we are expected to see based on this model throughout the next 2 weeks overall. We can see the heaviest for these mountainous areas between the White Mountains and then some of those mountains in Maine, where we maybe end up with above 6 inches of snowfall over the next couple of weeks. And I'm sure Mount Washington will end up with maybe closer to a foot or more still this time of year. They tend to be a little bit different than the surrounding areas. The GFS model agrees quite a bit, but I do want to also switch us over to that positive snow depth change. And we get a little bit more in the mountainous areas of New England, but it's really the same idea. I mean, a dusting to a few inches for most folks, most populated areas there. So yeah, I mean, it is some snowfall, and that's more than we could say just a little while ago, but definitely it's not earth-shattering amounts by any means. I want to take a look here at the Storm Prediction Center. This is still the day 1 outlook, so just for the rest of the night, overnight, we still have a slight risk from New York down to Pennsylvania, Maryland, DC, Virginia, coastal North Carolina, coastal South Carolina, down even into coastal Georgia and areas of Florida there. But for day 2, we quiet up a lot. We get a couple of general thunderstorm risk areas, and that's about it. Day 3, we do have a marginal risk here for parts of Nebraska into Iowa and a little bit of Missouri there, but nothing crazy, and we have nothing in the extended range. So hopefully we're quieting down for a little bit so we can kind of take a breather. We had a massive severe weather outbreak. I do want to address, thankfully we ended up with, I would say, less tornadoes than we expected, especially yesterday on Saturday. There was still many deadly tornadoes. I think, at least I know on Friday, I think there was 2 EF4s, both in Arkansas, I want to say. That were both deadly. So just terrible storms. But I want to tell you that it could have been a lot worse. We ended up with, I think, tornadoes in the 20s for both days, which is really significant for a tornado outbreak. But with the high risk issued, with the parameters in mind, this was an event that had the potential to have 60, 70, 80, 90 tornadoes, even 100 tornadoes just in this event. And the fact that we did not end up with those numbers is a miracle, really. It was the perfect setup. We made a quick video. It was a very interesting one yesterday. It was a little bit different than my typical videos, but we kind of just broke down the radar and the severe weather and everything. And there was showers and thunderstorms working their way into the area early and ahead of the cold front, which was going to cause most of your severe weather. And I told you guys that that could help out a lot. And it was still going to be bad either way. And, it would be hard to even hear this, but I told you guys, if this helps out, it could have been worse. It could have been worse if this was not here, these showers and thunderstorms. And I do feel like those those high amounts of convection that was just around in the deep south early in the day yesterday before the major storms arrived really saved lives yesterday. So that is something to be just thankful about. That is for sure a miracle. Super cool when you see weather kind of help the situation not be as bad, and it's things like that that are so unpredictable. It's just crazy. That is what drives my curiosity about weather. It's just like, who really saw that over convection ahead of the storm? And I've been thinking about it a lot recently through the winter and into the spring, how, we look at the models and we get an idea of what's going to happen. But once it's the day of an event, I mean, it is just kind of breaking down what's happening. And oftentimes it does look quite a bit different than what the models had almost every single time, really. So just really cool to be able to track that. And I'm very thankful that it did not end up being a historic outbreak. Anyway. Be sure to subscribe. We upload every single day. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.